Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, I have someone who lives and breathes alternative investing inside of retirement accounts. Here's why. His company has 409,000 accounts plus across all 50 states. They have $66 billion in retirement assets under custody. They have over 2.5 million transactions per year. They have over 50 years in financial services, and they've been voted the best self-directed IRA company by Investopedia 5 years in a row between 2020 and 2024. He's the guy helping everyday investors break out of Wall Street stranglehold and build wealth their way. That's right. Tonight, joining us from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, we've got Paul Erbs, account executive at Equity Trust Company. Paul Erbs, account executive at Equity Trust Company. Paul, welcome to the show.
AJ, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you today on Capital Conversations. Very excited to talk about self-directed IRAs, the current volatility we're seeing in the market, and really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you for coming. And let's just start real basic. What is a self-directed IRA, and how is it different from maybe a traditional or a Roth?
Great question. So that self-directed IRA term, AJ, is one marketing term, and that's truly what it is. At the end of the day, it's going to be the exact same type of IRA that you currently hold at a different custodian. It is really going to differ, though, based on the custodian that you work with. At the end of the day, that's really what the difference is going to be. Can they help you reach your end goal, which is to go ahead, diversify your retirement portfolio, and get into the world of alternative assets? Or are they going to have you pick from their a la carte menu of those mutual funds? Really, that's going to be the real differentiator there.
Right. So tell us a little bit, what kind of investments are allowed in a self-directed IRA?
Great question, AJ. Many different types. There's two investments that aren't allowed, that being life insurance and S corporation stock. Outside of that, our investors will invest into a wide array of assets. My personal favorite, of course, being real estate, and many of our investors' favorite as well, actually being real estate. Not only real estate property, but of course, real estate syndications are a very common investment that we see. As you mentioned, private equity is what we're known for when it comes to self-directing, and a large makeup of that are real estate syndications. Outside of that, hedge funds are definitely common groups that we work with on a day-to-day basis. Futures trading, foreign exchange trading, precious metals, cryptocurrency, investing with notes, secured and unsecured. The list goes on and on, AJ.
Yeah, so super wide variety, it sounds like, of investments that people can invest in. What have you found are actually the most common asset types your clients are investing in right now?
Yeah, I'd say real estate is certainly what we hold the most of in terms of a custodial relationship, that being real estate property and those being real estate syndication investments, really going to be the most common type of investment that I see on a day-to-day basis.
And can someone roll over their 401k or a traditional Roth into a self-directed? How does that work?
Yeah, one of the most common reasons people will create self-directed IRAs is because of a job change. So say somebody gets separated from their employer, they now have access to that capital. It is now completely their retirement funds, and they can invest how they choose to. And a lot of people will invest into real estate with us, and it's an amazing way to go ahead, take those funds out of those public equities and do what's known as a direct rollover, moving from one financial institution to ours to go ahead and get you invested. Now, there is so many preconceived notions and misconceptions regarding that. It is trivial at times. I have many people worrying about taxable events, even with these IRA to IRA transfers, and certainly that is something that I want to speak to today. It is in no ways a distribution. They're not personally taking a hold of those funds. We're moving it from one like-kind retirement account to another, ensuring that distribution does not occur.
Okay, so let's dive into that, because that's actually a super exciting topic, right? Let's talk about the tax advantages of using a self-directed IRA. Walk us through that.
Yeah, so the biggest tax advantage by far, AJ, is going to be that you're not paying capital gains taxes on your returns. So when it comes to investing, it is the most powerful tool one can use when going ahead and deploying capital. I'll work with many different people who are liquid. They have the funds in their checkings and savings, but they would rather allocate these dollars towards those investments due to the fact that they're not paying capital gains taxes on their returns. It is a phenomenal vehicle to go ahead and use when it comes to investing.
So you mentioned this a little earlier. You can buy real estate using a self-directed IRA. What are some of the rules around either buying or managing that property inside of your IRA?
Oh, great question. Just like anything, IRAs have rules, right? There's rules and regulations that are important to follow. One of those sets of rules that are really, really important to follow, AJ, when transacting with people, especially family members, are those prohibited parties. So there are parties I'm not able to go ahead and purchase and sell real estate to and from, nor can these parties use that property I purchased with that IRA. It's going to start with myself. If I had an IRA account, which I do, I would not be able to personally buy the real estate I own with that IRA account. It would be a way to go ahead and get a distribution without creating a taxable event, right? So I am not allowed to transact with my IRA, neither is my spouse, any of my lineal ancestors, my parents and grandparents, and then any of my lineal descendants, my children, their marriages, son and daughter-in-laws, and then any of their offspring. So my grandkids, great-grandkids, their forth. Very important to be aware of when going ahead purchasing those real estate properties.
Now, can you give us a use case? What's a typical use case that you found people using their self-directed IRAs for? Can you walk us through maybe front to back what that looks like?
Yeah, so the complete process of going ahead and creating that self-directed IRA, you'd go ahead, open an application, get the IRA account created. Then we'd work with you on the movement of funds, whether that's a rollover, it coming from something like a 401k account. Most people are aware 401k accounts can be one of the more popular retirement vehicles, but there are many others people can roll over from as well. Thrift savings plans, if you're a uniformed guard member. There's 403Bs for those in public school systems. There's 457Bs for those in government. Think firefighters, sheriffs. So many different types of accounts. Even qualified annuities can be rolled over into a traditional IRA. Tons of different ways to fund it.
Wow.
We'd either fund it from one of those vehicles or fund it via an IRA to IRA transfer. After we have funds, we'd work with you to go ahead, have you endorse those documents. Whether you're purchasing real estate, we'd work with that closing entity. Maybe it's an attorney, maybe it's a title company. Or if you're working with a syndication, we'd work with you, get that endorsed PPM. You'd call in, give us a verbal authorization, and your IRA would be invested.
Nice. So let's dive into some of the details, because in capital conversations, I love to get really detailed and ask some of the specific questions that people might have. So can you use financing to buy real estate in an IRA?
It's a great question. There's only one way you could go ahead and finance something with your IRA, and it's called a non-recourse loan. It's going to be a way that your IRA could go ahead and get a loan. Now, these do typically come with higher down payments. Typically, at least 30% is going to be that threshold, and that property also needs to be cash flowing. You're not able to go ahead and obtain a non-recourse loan for land. The groups that I am aware of that offer those non-recourse loans want to see that cash flowing property because there's an incentive there. But there is a way to go ahead and accomplish that, AJ. Yes.
Nice. Okay, so it sounds like it needs to be non-recourse. Are there any other requirements aside from non-recourse and cash flowing?
You're not able to use personal credit on behalf of your IRA. So something to be very aware of, which is why that non-recourse loan makes it all possible. There's not going to be a personal guarantee, and you're not going to be going ahead and using credit on behalf of your IRA. Very important when going ahead, taking a look at that. Other rules and regulations I want to speak to as well, AJ, is self-dealing. So when you're going ahead, when you're managing these properties, which you're allowed to do, I could go ahead and find tenants on behalf of my IRA for these properties. I could go ahead, whether it's long-term or short-term. I can't be paying myself for doing so, though. I'm not able to go ahead and actually cut myself a check for finding that tenant. Just something to be aware of when going ahead and transact.
Okay, so what is UDFI and how does it affect leveraged real estate in an IRA?
Yeah, unrelated debt financed income. That's what UDFI is going to be. It will affect your IRA because ultimately UDFI is going to be a tax, an unrelated tax nonetheless. But it is going to be a tax your IRA would occur from going ahead and investing with leverage. So important to be aware of when going ahead and making those leverage investments. It is only going to be associated with the portion of the real estate that's actually leveraged. But there is a tax known as UDFI that is going to be associated with those leverage investments.
So we got some taxes, we have some rules. Let's say, what if someone breaks those rules? Like, what would be the consequence if you invested and you maybe you did it wrong?
Yeah, it would be very real. There would be a very real consequence. So you would have a forced early distribution. That's really what would amount, as well as fines from the IRS. Certainly something one would want to avoid. I mean, especially if you're not 59 and a half. If you're under that age of distribution, you're also going to get an additional 10% penalty when that forced distribution happens. Certainly something that you would not want to occur whatsoever. That's why it's really important to work with a qualified custodian, and with a custodian that's been in business for quite some time and knows what they're doing.
So how are rental profits and capital gains treated maybe differently or the same inside of an IRA?
Yeah, so those capital gains taxes, they're not going to be something to worry about within that IRA. The only tax that, as you mentioned, could be incurred would be that UDFI. I will see many different people cash flow off of rental properties when it comes to being past that age of 59 and a half. An awesome way to not pay those capital gains taxes, but still be able to go ahead and take those distributions.
Nice. Let's talk about setup and logistics. You mentioned it a little bit earlier. Let's walk through again. How does someone open an account with Equity Trust or someone else who can help you with your self-directed IRA?
Yeah, the first thing they do, AJ, is they give me a call. That's step one. To go ahead and have a goals-based conversation, I think is very important. I want to understand what they're trying to accomplish. Before I put any product or anything in front of them, I want to know what they're trying to achieve, first and foremost. It's not always a one-size-fit approach. So first, I'd want to have a conversation with them, see what they're trying to accomplish and what their end result is. After we would have that, I would send them a link to where they could go ahead, open the account. Takes about 15 to 20 minutes to enter that personal information in.
Nice. Okay. And what is the typical timeline for getting fully set up and ready to invest? Is it that 15 minutes? Is it something else?
I wish it was just 15 minutes. That would be phenomenal. We'd be transacting a lot more. It's really going to differ depending on how they're funding the account. So if they're going to be doing an IRA to IRA transfer, much more of a seamless process. We'll actually go ahead, put in the transfer request. The receiving custodian in this will actually be the one to request funds from that original custodian. We'll go ahead, get an endorsed transfer form from the client. Depending on what institution they work with, they may be a little more brick and mortar than most. They may require a pen signature. They may allow for DocuSign. There's some nuance involved in that. Some will require account statements, some not. We would go ahead, send that over, and receive funds typically in a 2-week timeline. AJ, is when we would actually be able to go ahead, get somebody invested if they're transferring from an IRA. If they're transferring from a 401k or any of those other vehicles that we mentioned before here, they're actually going to have a check sent on their behalf from their current custodian to us. And we'll actually hold that check, let it clear for 5 days. So typically 3 weeks is the timeline I see for those rollovers, rather.
3 weeks. Okay. So someone can't just walk up to you, say, hey, I want to get a self-directed IRA. Same week they open their account and they go invest in a deal. That's not really a thing.
Unless they have an IRA account at Schwab, I have not seen it done. I do want to give Charles Schwab some credit here. When it comes to going ahead and funding investments with IRA to IRA transfers, they're pretty speedy.
Nice. Okay. So tell me a little bit more. What types of accounts can you self-direct?
Oh, great question. So when it comes to self-directing, you could actually self-direct more accounts than just IRAs. You can actually self-direct a health savings account. Most people have no idea that that's even a possibility. And I'll see it commonly used. I will see people use an HSA to invest into real estate syndications. Say you have a family, a very young family. Maybe you guys are all healthy. You go on hikes. You're eating right. You're following a strict regimen. Your house is in order. We're not taking trips to the doctor. Everything's going great. And you're able to contribute to that year after year and allow it to snowball with that compounding interest. You could go ahead, use that as a vehicle. Another account people are totally unaware of, an education savings account. Another vehicle you could go ahead and self-direct. So there are many different accounts out there that you could go ahead and use to get into real estate.
I had no idea. That is awesome. Can you tell us a story of maybe someone who's used an HSA? Like, what how did that help them out?
Yeah, so I actually worked with a gentleman here this past year who invested $50,000 out of his HSA to get into a syndication. He met the minimum threshold from that general partner with his HSA, and he actually did it through an LLC. So there's a nuanced term called a checkbook IRA, and it can actually be done with these HSAs and ESAs as well. And it's an awesome vehicle when it comes to real estate. It gives you that limited liability protection. It allows for ease of transaction speed. It allows for you to actually have a checkbook, write it directly from your account to go ahead and get vested. Now, there are many, many different nuances when it comes to that checkbook IRA. Now, this is something that we have experience in and something we've helped thousands of investors with, is going ahead and getting that LLC stood up, because there are requirements when creating it. It needs to be manager managed, which is going to allow that investor to be the signator, to go ahead and make those investments, but it needs to have the sole member just be the IRA. The IRA needs to own it outright, but an awesome way to go ahead and get invested.
Yeah, really cool. So are there any minimums or contributions required to open an account?
Yeah, so we do have a minimum of $250 when it comes to an account. I have not come across an individual yet who has had a problem meeting and fulfilling on that minimum, but outside of that, that's going to be the only minimum to go ahead and get invested. I mean, I'll work with such a wide array of investors, AJ. I mean, just this week alone, right? I've worked with an investor who's going to go ahead and place $5,000 in syndication, and I've also worked with an investor who just transferred over $15 million from their current custodians with 2 accounts. So the gamut is very wide there.
$15 million.
Yeah.
Self-directed.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. So you've already answered this question a few times. People can invest in real estate syndications through an IRA. What about investing in a friend or family member's business? Have you seen that before?
I have. So with the family member, you just want to be sure it's not any of those disqualified parties. So who can I invest with when it comes to family members? I can invest with my brother, my sister, my first cousin, my uncle, my aunt. The IRS doesn't think they're going to do me any favors when it comes to investing. So you can invest with family members, just got to make sure they're not nuclear, not those original ones we touched on. But I certainly have seen that. And more commonly with friends, I know people are sometimes leery to mix business and family, but I've seen some very powerful concoctions when those two are mixed as well. But yes, certainly something that I commonly see is what you described, either investing in their company or even coming together through tenancy in common and collectively purchasing real estate as a group is something else that I've seen as well.
Let's talk more about that, because that's something I've heard about, tenancy in common. I haven't done it myself. Are you familiar with some of the intricacies of that? Or can you, I guess, walk through that with us, just kind of your involvement in something like a TIC?
Yeah, would absolutely love to. So when it comes to investing with the IRA in a TIC, super important that everything's pro rata. So I want to speak to that first and foremost. So say, AJ, you and I hypothetically are going to go in and on a deal together. We found a great piece of real estate. It's here in Sioux Falls. The market's growing. Our job economy has never been stronger, and things are looking up. Things are looking up, right? So we've identified a property. Hypothetically, let's say it's $200,000, which is a property for maybe a value add here in Sioux Falls potentially. We both contribute $100,000. We're 50-50 owners. You invest $100,000 in cash. I invest $100,000 through my IRA. So there's the TIC right there. Those are the two different entities. Your name would be on the deed, and so would Equity Trust Company as custodian for benefit of Paul Herbis, account number 12345. Because I don't personally own it. My IRA does. And that's important because when it comes to property taxes, we need to both pay 50% of that. You 50% personally. My 50% needs to come from my IRA. And the same is true of any returns. Say we go ahead, we do that value add, we pay our property taxes. Say we don't even do the value add, we just hold. We hold, 5 years passes, we're selling it for $300,000. $150,000 is returned to you, and $150,000 is returned to me, but I'm not subject to the capital gains taxes on my investment. Now, it does need to flow back to my IRA account to make all of that possible, but just a phenomenal way to go ahead and work with others when it comes to real estate investing.
So let's talk about private lending, promissory notes. Can you use your self-directed IRA to invest in those as well?
You certainly can. So promissory notes are another way. It's a great way to play the bank. Now, when going ahead and drafting that promissory note, you need to be aware of your state's usury laws. So if there is a certain rate that you're only able to charge, just very important to be aware of that, just from a legal standpoint. But yeah, certainly something that can be done. You'll need a maturity date, of course. You'll also need a percentage on there. And then typically you'll want it secured.
Right. And cryptocurrency. I think you mentioned this earlier. Are cryptocurrency investments allowed inside of equity trust accounts?
Yeah. So you can certainly invest into cryptocurrency. And I'll even work with some cryptocurrency funds as well. So there's just so many different ways to get placed, AJ. It's phenomenal.
Okay. So last question, when it comes to like advanced investment options outside of the typical syndication, can they hold like precious metals? Let's say gold, silver. Can you use your self-directed IRA for that too?
You certainly can. So precious metals are going to be a very common investment, especially for those who still believe in that good old gold standard. Really, that's going to be something that I will see investors go ahead and place funds into, maybe just not as common as real estate.
So let's talk a little bit more about compliance and prohibited transactions. You touched on these a little earlier. Can you just walk us through again? What is a prohibited transaction and what are some common examples of that?
Yeah, so the most common example of a prohibited transaction is ultimately going to be dealing and transacting with one of those disqualified parties. And it's sad to see, certainly, but just something you need to be so aware of as an IRA investor. I can't invest with my mom and dad. I can't invest I can't purchase something for myself, nor my spouse, children, son, daughter-in-laws, grandchildren. Just if you guys get anything out of the podcast today, write that down. I would ask you to write that down. But prohibited transactions are going to be those transactions that you ultimately aren't able to make. Another example, AJ, is going to be self-dealing. So say I'm a fund manager and I'm raising $50 million to go ahead and acquire a beautiful hotel in Atlanta, Georgia. If I was going to go ahead and do that, well, first, I wouldn't want to source from any of those parties that I just listed. And secondly, if I'm going ahead and making an investment in my own deal as an LP, it's important I'm not paying myself monetarily for doing so. So I would need to waive any performance fee, any management fee, anything of the sort, because I can't benefit monetarily off of my IRA's investment.
Yep. And speaking to that, let's say, for example, we buy that property together in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, buy it for $100,000, sell it for $300,000. Can you, if you were the self-directed IRA holder and investor, could you stay in or work on that property that your IRA owns?
Oh, great question, AJ. I would not be able to. Even if I just owned 1% with my IRA, just the smallest fraction, even if I were just to come on just as a teeny tiny investor with you, AJ, I would not be able to personally use that property. I wouldn't be able to sleep in it. And I want to call out land here too. Say I purchase acreage here in South Dakota. I love hunting. I'm a hunter myself. I wouldn't be able to go out and hunt on the land. I can't personally use it. I wouldn't be able to tear up on it with four-wheelers, nothing of the sort. So really important, AJ, that there is that clear distinction. It is an investment. It's a true investment. It's not something I'm going to go use as a vacation home. It is something that I'm making a decision on because I think it's going to have a great return, and I don't want to pay those capital gains taxes associated with it.
So, Paul, how does Equity Trust help the customers or the clients stay compliant with all these? Because there's all these different rules, right? It almost makes your head spin thinking about all these rules. How do you guys stay compliant? Help us stay compliant.
Yeah, it's having conversations like this, AJ. Education is such an important thing when it comes to investing. And really it's having those conversations on the front end. I mean, when I led with process, it's having that one-on-one via Teams. It's being able to sit down, learn about their goals. What are they really trying to accomplish here? What's their end result? What are they really looking to do? Because ultimately, we don't give tax, legal, or financial advice, and it's something that you need to be aware of as an investor.
I'd love to talk to you about some of these things, right? I don't know if maybe this is your area of expertise or if this is something you want to talk about, but conversions, like a Roth conversion. Could you just talk about when does it make sense to do a Roth conversion?
Great question. So it makes sense, first and foremost, if you believe that taxes are going to ever increase. I've always challenged people here, anyone, when speaking about Roth conversion, show me where federal taxes don't increase. Pull out a year, show me where those percentages don't increase. I don't care what aisle you're on, what side of administration. Due to inflation, taxes increase. So one thought process there is let's pay the piper now. That's one mode of thought. Another mode of thought is I'm going to earn more later in life. So I'll see a lot of young investors also take this approach of the Roth conversion because they believe they're going to be making more money at 59 and a half, which is that age of distribution. Because ultimately, with traditional IRA funds, with those pre-tax funds that aren't in the Roth account, once when I take those out at 59 and a half and I start to take those distributions, I'm going to have to pay ordinary income tax on it. So it's important if I have that pre-tax money that when I take those distributions in life, that I'm not bumping myself up into a higher tax bracket. So that's what the Roth is built for. It's built to go ahead, create a snowball of compounding interest in the absence of taxation. That's most commonly, AJ, when I'll see those Roth conversions used.
And personally, I love Roth IRAs. I think they're one of the best inventions ever. But what are some of the tax implications of converting a traditional IRA to a Roth?
Yeah, it's a taxable event. I mean, you will pay the piper. I mean, that's ultimately what it is you're going ahead, you're taking that on as earned income, and you're going to be taxed effectively. So while going ahead and doing it, and while going ahead and doing those Roth conversions, some people will go ahead and parlay it out over a couple of years. If they have a large tax liability, they'll take a bite of the elephant at a time.
And how do you decide which type of IRA is the best for real estate or private deals?
Yeah, great question. So when it comes to a checkbook IRA, I think that's the best for real estate property due to that whole limited liability protection. If I have a tenant in a property and they fall and they accidentally break their leg on a staircase, I don't want to be personally liable for that. Accidents happen. I totally get it. I don't want to be personally liable for an accident. So that's really a huge benefit to the checkbook IRA I see is when it comes to real estate property. Outside of that, ease of transaction is another reason that I'll see it used, but also foreign real estate. When investors go ahead and purchase property abroad, a lot of foreign countries will not recognize an IRA, but they will recognize you writing them a check with USD. They certainly will recognize that and take that check and cash it. So it's also commonly used when going ahead and making those international deals. But a true self-directed IRA, a traditional or Roth, is something that would typically be used for those syndication investments rather than the checkbook.
Remind me again, what is a checkbook IRA? Is that just an IRA where basically you have an LLC that's incorporated with that?
Checkbook IRA is going to be a single member LLC that's manager managed, allowing you to still be the signator while also allowing for the sole member to be that IRA.
Got it. Cool. All right. Thanks. So can someone split a deal between like a Roth IRA and a traditional account?
They certainly could. They certainly could make investments from both accounts into the exact same deal. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. And is it better to do a Roth conversion before or after a major investment?
Great question. I would say before, due to appreciation, especially in the world of real estate. I rarely see depreciation occur. So typically before is going to be when that investor will want to go ahead and make that happen.
So let's talk more about structure and partnerships. Can someone partner their IRA with another investor's IRA in the same deal?
They certainly could. So 2 SD IRAs in the same deal is certainly something I've seen done. And you can also partner with your own IRA. So I know I covered prohibited transactions earlier. I'm not able to buy something with my IRA that I personally own. But what I could do is I could go ahead and use both pools of capital while initially acquiring the property. So what I will see, AJ, is people partnering with their own IRA through a TIC, going ahead, purchasing this property with my own cash, and then also purchasing it with my own IRA. I will see that done as well.
Interesting. So you've got your own cash and your own IRA.
Yeah.
But because you have your own self-directed IRA, you can't pay yourself out of that, the let's call it cash flow, right?
Yep.
Is that still the case or no? Is it just that half of it?
It would still need to be pro rata. So a 50, it needs to exactly be taken care of 50-50 when it comes to anything flowing in and out of the account. Just very important to be mindful of that. Something else that I really wanted to cover with you today as well, AJ, is going to be exit strategies. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to exiting your IRA, most people think of distributions as cash. That's when I think of a distribution, or that's what I thought of 5 years ago when I thought of a distribution was cash. I'm pulling cash out of my account. There's also another way to do it, AJ, and that's going to be through an in-kind distribution where I actually deed a property over for my personal name, over for my IRA's name into my personal name. So I could actually go ahead, say I have a traditional IRA, I purchased a property hypothetically for $100,000, and I want to go ahead and I want to personally use it because I can't right now because it's my IRAs. But man, I would love to. I'm over 59 and a half. I got some grandkids. It's right on a lake. I would absolutely love to go ahead and let my grandkids come out here. So what do? I do an in-kind distribution. I go get an appraisal so that we have a number to go ahead and report to the IRS. And I would go ahead, take that tax hit. Some people will do it all at once. Some people will spread it out over a number of years, 20% deeding over, 20% deeding over. But it's a great way to go ahead and actually exit something out of your IRA to where you can personally really start enjoying it, really start using it. Just such a common way people will go ahead, grab their retirement home and hold on to it until they can use it.
Nice. Yeah. And I'm going to ask a question just for selfish interest, because
Please.
I've had folks approach me with interest to do like an IRA investment and say, let's say like a joint venture or something.
Yeah.
What would be some of your advice for that person that's looking to invest using their IRA? Like, what are some things they can do? What are some things they can't do? I know we've touched on a few of those things, but would love to just kind of lay it out in that kind of scenario.
Yeah. So first and foremost, you want to like, know, and trust that person that you're going ahead and getting the deal with. I think that's by far one of the more important things, when going ahead and making this deal, is having that level of comfortability with that partner that you're working with. When it comes to other things to keep in mind with that IRA, something that I think is really important is, what are we going to do to the property? What renovations are we going to do? What are we going to improve on? Because I'm going to be responsible for that percentage of equity that my IRA owns. So let's say it is a true 50 deal. Let's say we want to put a new roof on, and we also want to do siding. We want to give it a complete exterior facelift before we go ahead and bring it to market. Let's say that costs $50,000. If I own half of it, my IRA needs to pay $25,000 to go ahead and make those improvements. So very important to keep in mind when going ahead, entering these ticks, that I have that additional capital at my disposal. Maybe it's not in my self-directed IRA now. Maybe it's sitting over at Fidelity, Schwab, T. Rowe Price in another vehicle that I could roll over and draw upon as I need it. But just something super important to be aware of when going ahead and getting into those deals.
Because in that instance, right, you can't finance or leverage anything. It would all have to be a cash transaction. You'd have to pay for those renovations in cash, correct?
You got it.
Got it. So let's talk about risk management and custodian support. What kind of due diligence do you recommend before investing with the self-directed IRA?
Covering those prohibited transactions that we spoke of, AJ, I think that is by far the most important thing to do before going ahead and getting invested with an SDI IRA. Ensuring I'm not working with any of those nuclear family members when it comes to that IRA's investment, that it's not being placed into them, and that they're not personally using it. I would really call that out first and foremost before going ahead and getting placed. And then ensuring I'm not commingling funds. So I've heard a horror story of a checkbook IRA investing out of that LLC, of them using it personally, right? So just ensuring that my retirement funds are an investment vehicle. That's what they're to be used for, is a true investment. So I can't take those funds. I can't take the kids to Disneyland for a week, spend a night in the magical castle, and have the time of my life with my retirement funds. Unfortunately, that's not investing. So just really important to be sure that what you're doing is going to have a good ROI, and that you're not personally commingling.
Equity Trust itself, do you guys help investors verify deals or verify sponsors?
Yeah, great question. We don't do due diligence, AJ, so that truly is not something we would do. I would ask any of those investors to really do the homework with those groups they're going to go ahead and invest with. Yep.
And what would you say sets Equity Trust apart from other self-directed IRA custodians?
Yeah, so outside of being the oldest custodian and the largest, I think what really sets us apart, and especially here at Equity Institutional Services, is going to be that level of concierge. That ability to go ahead, have a goals-based conversation, try to really understand what they're trying to accomplish with their investment, because I think that is a phenomenal way to go ahead and rule out any of those disqualified transactions and any of those prohibited transactions, any of those disqualified parties, by having that goals-based conversation. What really are you trying to accomplish here? Are you trying to purchase this land, build on it, and then live on it when your IRA owns it? Well, that's not a great idea. Here's why. So being able to have those high-level conversations with clients before going ahead and opening accounts is really what I think separates us from the rest of the pack.
So, and that brings up the next question for me, which is, you have that initial goals-based conversation. Let's say someone's doing deals pretty regularly. What does your customer support model look like for that person who's like continually doing deals?
Yeah, great question. So another way we differentiate ourselves, AJ, is our client service department. They do a phenomenal job. Most custodians, after you get placed into a deal, here's a 1-800 number, give it a call. We quickly found out that sophisticated investors don't want to have 6 different conversations with 6 different individuals, right? So when it comes to our client service experience and our client experience, that investor would work with one representative throughout the lifespan of their account. So they're going to have somebody directly to go to when it comes to making those transactions and getting invested in a timely manner.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about using like local banks when we buy deals is we have someone to talk to. It's not like we pick up the phone and it's like you're on the line for 20 minutes waiting for someone to get back to you, and then they don't know the answer, so they transfer you to someone else. So it's cool that you guys have like a dedicated support team, it sounds like.
Yeah.
What trends are you seeing in alternative investing across your client base? Have you seen anything in terms of divesting or investing in certain things that maybe had different in the past like 2 years?
Yeah, so if we're talking about the past 24 hours, my phone's been ringing pretty heavily just due to what's going on with some of the blue chip stocks and what's going on with the Dow Jones. That's just a 24-hour observation. I mean, my goodness. Yeah, the Dow, the S&P 500, NASDAQ, I mean, all of it. It's wild to see what's happened even in the past 24 hours. Just so many investors looking to go ahead, get placed in alternative, get out of that public sector due to fear a little bit, AJ. I mean, everybody kind of saw what happened with tariffs, and my goodness, I mean, it was the outside of 2020. I mean, this was the worst day for the it was the worst day for the S&P today since 2011. So, I mean, it's wild 24 hours. But just in terms of long-term strategies, what I've really seen working with clients over the past few years, I think foreign real estate's gaining a little bit more traction just into retirement funds. I think that's becoming slightly more common. I will see, and even in terms of like on the fund level in syndicators, I've seen a lot of people start working across the aisle and start working together. I think there's been a lot more collaboration these past 2 years from capital raisers, which ultimately I think helps limited partners. I think it provides for better deals.
Yeah. Would you say, I'm really curious in terms of younger investors versus maybe investors that are closer to that 59.5 range, have you started to see a lot more younger investors use their self-directed IRA, or do you think it's still something where like it's not really well known?
I think most people in America don't know about what we're talking about today, AJ. I learned about IRAs and 401ks, sure, but not once did I ever learn about self-directing in my undergraduate or my graduate courses. Most of the investors I work with, I think, are at least going to be around age 30, at least. I don't see a lot of 20-year-olds going ahead and self-directing. I'll more commonly see 50-year-olds. I will more commonly see 50-year-olds go ahead and make those investments because they're at the place in their life where they're really concerned about retirement and it's front of mind. And I think that's really why they're considering it so heavily, and why it's so important to them is because that age of retirement, they're trying to close that gap as quickly as possible. The younger investors I'll work with typically are going to be very, very eager when it comes to investing. They look to invest often. They're typically high earners. They typically maybe have their own practice. Maybe they're a practicing psychologist or attorney or a dentist is another common younger demographic that I'll see in terms of business professionals.
Yeah. What's one investment strategy that you've seen skyrocket in the past couple of years?
Yeah, any syndication that's a Reg D 506B, 506C. I mean, that's throughout the 2020s. I mean, that has certainly been something that I've seen a lot of.
Yeah. And kind of going back to the doctor example, right? Like, can a doctor use their self-directed IRA to maybe, like, let's say, buy the building that their practice is going to be in?
Good
is
question.
That something that they could do, or would they be personally benefiting from that? I guess how would you look at that?
I'd look at it as the latter. Yeah, I think it would be a personal benefit. I think that they should definitely do that with their buddy who is also a dentist, though, and practices in a different building. I think that would be an amazing opportunity.
Got it. So maybe you're a dentist, you know other dentists.
There.
Dentist B needs a new practice. Dentist A uses his self-directed IRA to buy that for him. Now he's his landlord.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, now we're talking. Okay, fascinating. Very cool. What are there any regulatory changes on the horizon that self-directed IRA investors should know about?
I don't think there's going to be anything that's going to shake up the world just in terms of any legal changes with self-directed IRAs. Another side of business that I'll do, that I wear a hat on a daily basis, is 1031 exchanges. They've been talking about doing away with that for the last decade. Do I think that'll ever come through on our 1031 exchange side business? Never. I think it's an amazing way to defer taxes, and I think it helps solve our housing problem in America. I think if it didn't exist, man, I think there'd be much more rampant problem when it comes to the housing shortage.
What would you say is one creative deal structure that you've seen so far inside a self-directed IRA that stands out?
I love note investing. I think that's about as creative as it gets, just because you could go ahead with that promissory note and get very, very detail oriented. I love promissory notes. I think it's a great way. Loaning money is an awesome thing, especially when it's tied to real estate and there's security interest involved. But outside of that, I think going ahead, partnering with other self-directed IRAs is certainly another tool that I've seen used by people who are business partners themselves. Great question, AJ.
I have about 3 questions left. What would you say to someone who thinks self-directed IRAs are too complicated?
I would say they haven't had a conversation with me yet, AJ. That's what I would say. Really, it's as simple as going ahead, opening an account, transferring funds, and then deploying into an investment. I mean, really, you need to have an IRA account open, so you need 20 minutes of time. You need about 2 to 3 weeks of patience for the funds to move. And then you need to meet an awesome syndicator who knows what they're doing and who's ready to go ahead and get you that return.
Yeah. And either speaking of that awesome syndicator or someone who maybe you've seen, you've worked with before, or maybe you've worked with like someone with a self-directed IRA and you've seen them have a great result since they started investing using it. What would you say is your favorite story of someone who's used a self-directed IRA to build some pretty serious wealth?
Here's one for you. So this investor was someone who was invested into an international real estate fund. Went ahead and asked him, I said, well, that's great. What countries is that fund invested in? Can you tell me where it's located? And he had no idea. So what did he do? He went ahead and he reached out to his financial advisor and tried to figure out where those funds were located, what countries they were invested into. Had absolutely no idea what countries this international real estate fund was placing funds into. So he went ahead, self-directed it, bought some multifamily, and has been doing great ever since. So, man, I think it's comical sometimes how we trust maybe our college roommate, maybe it was a high school buddy, to go ahead and manage some funds we have. I think self-directing funds is an awesome tool, especially when people take their returns and their options into their own hands. I think it's incredible.
And what a great question you asked too. I mean, it seems like a simple question, but it's something we don't really think about. Because think about it this way, right? Like, how many people really know where their self-directed or where their
retirement funds
going? Yeah,
no idea. Like, a large cap fund. Well, can you tell me what that means? Like, they would have no idea.
Companies are in there. Like, where are they operating at? I have no idea. Right. I have no idea.
It's blind trust at times, and really we get wrapped up with the word fiduciary, somebody who always has your best interest in mind, which they certainly need to abide to. But at the end of the day, they're a business. They're a for-profit business.
Right. So if someone wants to take that control back, if they're looking at their retirement funds and they're thinking like, I don't know where any of this stuff is going right now. I have no idea where this money's being invested. Let's say they want to take that control back. What's step one? Yeah.
Step one is look on the returns. I think that's the first thing. Pull up the statement. Where's our IRA? What account is it? Is it an IRA? Is it a 401k? Is it identify? So the first step is identify. Identify what type of account you have. After that, take a hard look at those returns. Look at those non-performing funds that you see on that page. And after that, it's giving me a call. It's having that goals-based conversation. It's maybe you don't know what your goals are. I mean, that's another spot to start. What are my goals? What are my goals when it comes to investing? What makes me excited about real estate? What am I passionate about? So having that goals-based conversation to really figure out what that desired end result is. And more times than not, that turns into self-directing funds.
And let's say someone wanted to give you a call. Where can they reach you? Where can they find you? Where can they learn more about Equity Trust?
Yeah, so they could go ahead and reach me directly on my cell phone, 605-799-8620. And they could reach me there via call or text. That is my mobile. They could also reach me by my email, which is p.herbes@trustetc.com. And then I also have a calendar link as well that they could go ahead and leverage.
Awesome. Well, everybody, this has been Paul, Equity Trust. Again, Equity Trust, over 400,000 accounts across all 50 states, over 66 billion in retirement assets under custody right now, 2.5 million transactions a year, more than 50 years in financial services. Again, voted the best self-directed IRA company by Investopedia 5 years in a row. Paul, really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you dropping knowledge here and sharing a lot with us.
Thank you so much, AJ. I really appreciate the opportunity today to join you here on Capital Conversations. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week with Chris for real estate performance coaching. Until then, take care.